awaken him. How will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
And when he asks us to dedicate ourselves ever more perfectly to him, how will he find us?
Awake and ready.
Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Friend, beloved God,
Friend, beloved God,
Great Masters of Self-Realization,
Great Masters of Self-Realization,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Paramhansa Yogananda,
Paramhansa Yogananda,
Saints of all religions,
Saints of all religions,
we humbly invoke thy presence.
we humbly invoke thy presence.
Bless and guide our lives.
Bless and guide our lives.
With ever deeper attunement.
With ever deeper attunement.
That we may feel that you are the doer.
That we may feel that you are the doer.
Behind all our acts.
Behind all our acts.
Behind our feelings.
Behind our feelings.
Behind our thoughts.
Behind our thoughts.
Is your holy presence.
Is your holy presence.
As we receive you.
As we receive
Make
you.
us your channels to share in this world.
Make us your channels to share in this world.
Oh, peace. Please have a seat. Good morning, friends. Great to see you.
Introspection. People commonly delude themselves with easy rationalizations. Maybe I wasn't as kind as I might have been, they'll say, but wouldn't you have been unkind too if he treated you that way? It wasn't my fault. The fault was his. Thus, the blame for every wrong is placed at one's neighbor's door. Introspection means to behold oneself from a center of inner calmness, without the slightest mental bias, open to what may be wrong in oneself, not excusing it, but not condemning it either. Introspection means referring what one sees to the superconscious mind and detachedly accepting guidance when it comes. Now let's affirm together, first in a strong voice, waking up the conscious mind. I am what I am.
I am what I am.
Wishing cannot change me.
Wishing cannot change me.
Let me therefore face my faults with gratitude.
Let me therefore face my faults with gratitude.
For only by facing them,
For only by facing them,
can I work on them and change them.
can I work on them and change them.
And now in a regular speaking voice, I am what I am.
I am what I am.
Wishing cannot change me.
Wishing cannot change me.
Let me therefore face my faults with gratitude.
Let me therefore face my faults with gratitude.
For only by facing them
For only by facing them
can I work on them and change them.
can I work on them and change them.
And now in a whisper, but with even deeper focus and intensity, bringing this thought into the subconscious mind. I am what I am. Wishing cannot change me. Let me therefore face my faults with gratitude. For only by facing them can I work on them and change them. And now silently, mentally broadcasting it from the spiritual eye at the superconscious level. I am what I am. Wishing cannot change me. Let me therefore face my faults with gratitude. For only by facing them can I work on them and change them. And now pray with me silently. Let me not delude myself with desires, Lord. Teach me to see behind the play of my thoughts thy ever calm gaze of wisdom. Om. Peace. Amen. Good morning, friends. Happy Sunday.
Good morning.
For those joining for the first time, my name is Dharmadevi, and this is my husband Narayan. And I'm welcome to those joining online. I'm going to read to you from Rays of the One Light Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita by Swami Ananda. And this topic is, why do devotees fall? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. An endlessly fascinating question is, why did Judas fall after receiving the extraordinary blessing of being accepted into the inner circle of Jesus Christ's disciples? For Judas was one of the 12 apostles. Yet he betrayed Jesus and earned for himself the opprobrium of Christendom for all futurity for his sin. We find Judas reprimanding Jesus just days before that betrayal. Jesus, aware that his disciples would soon be facing with his death the supreme tragedy of their lives, allowed Mary to express her devotion by anointing his feet with costly oil. This act of wanton waste, as Judas saw it, awakened indignation in that disciple. Why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor? This, he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief and kept the purse and bare what was put therein. Then said Jesus, let her alone. Against the day of my burying hath she kept this. For the poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always. Doubt not the power of delusion. Respect it, indeed fear it, though not in the sense of cowering before it. For as Yogananda said, one is not safe until he attains nirvikalpa samadhi, the state of final union with God. Judas, through attachment to money, opened his consciousness to subtle influences, which may be called satanic, that drew his thoughts toward other related attitudes, the importance of worldly power, for instance, and of worldly influence. The Bhagavad Gita gives a graphic explanation of how easily the mind can be drawn downward once it begins to feed on wrong attitudes. In the second chapter, Sri Krishna states, if one ponders on sense objects, there springs up attraction to them. From attraction grows desire, desire impatient for fulfillment, flames to anger. From anger there arises infatuation, the delusion that one object alone is worth clinging to the exclusion of all others. From infatuation ensues forgetfulness of the higher self. From forgetfulness of the self follows degeneration of the discriminative faculty. And when discrimination is lost, there follows the annihilation of one's spiritual life. At the first thought of delusion, Paramahansa Yogananda said, that is the time to stop it. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om.
Good morning again, friends.
Good morning.
I want to share with you, this is Yogananda's book of prayer demands called Whispers from Eternity. And this one is called Make Us Transparent, that thy light may shine through us unimpeded. The sunbeams of thy love shine equally on all the members of thy cosmic family, whether prophet, hero, villain, tiny moth, or me. It is our own fault if we make ourselves opaque by our own mental and emotional dullness. Teach us to wipe away the dirt of error from the windows of our understanding. Our arms are weak for the task, owing to our long inner spiritual resistance. O Master Cleanser, lend power to our efforts, that we may wipe away every last spot that clings to our minds, obscuring our transparency and preventing free entry to thy light. Oh, make us fully clean again, invisible in our egos, because transmitting only by visions of thy beauty, which lies within us. I was remembering a story that Jyotish told me related to this topic. And it's a story of a grandfather and grandson. And they go to a supermarket to shop. And the grandson is about 7 or 8, like Anjali, and just making a fuss and complaining about the shopping. And the grandfather very, patiently says, just a couple more items, William, and we'll be gone. And then they go to the next aisle and he picks up another thing, and the grandson is getting even worse. And he says, just one more thing, William, and we're almost out of here. And then finally they get to the checkout, and he's checking his items out with the clerk, and now the young boy just has like a complete meltdown, crying and screaming and wailing. And he says, William, we're almost done, and we'll be back into the car and back home not too long. And the man, he patiently waited, and they were about to walk out of the supermarket, and when the superintendent of the store came over and said, I'm so impressed the way you teach and model this behavior for how patient you were with your son. And the grandfather said, well, you don't understand. I am William.
You missed that the clerk said you were
you were so patient with William. I threw a big bomb in that joke. The point is that he was patient while the little boy was not patient. Isn't that the way with ourselves, that we get so impatient? I don't know about you, but I find, why am I so impatient? What is the big fuss over? And that's what this passage is about. We have within us, we're a divine being, right? All the scriptures tell us that we're a soul, we're the light, we're the Atman, we're the immortal, eternal presence, and yet we get out onto the 405 and somebody cuts us off, and we don't feel like that, right? I remember, I've told this story before, it's like before Kriya Yoga, after Kriya Yoga, about 20 years ago, when I was working on the East Coast, and somebody on the Jersey Turnpike cut me off, and they were was a pretty bad cutoff. That's my rationalization. And so I did lay on the horn. I remember it was like a 7-second like blowing of a conch, in the Mahabharata. And then about a year ago, Dharmadevi and I were driving here in Santa Monica, and I was going really slow because I was looking for a parking space, and this guy behind me, when somebody is trying to get around you, you can tell. He was just really impatient, trying to get around. And he pulled up next to us, and he said, "Hey, buddy, the speed limit's 30 miles an hour, not 3 miles an hour." And he kept going. But the funny part for me with that experience was I didn't have that same response of getting angry. Dharmadevi and I just laughed about it. I was like, well, here's Divine Mother, and she's telling me I'm going too slow, and I was going too slow. If one of the keys for us to grow spiritually, how we can avoid this pitfall of what the story of Judas, of course, is pride. Pride's one of the last defects to go. Our ego is like a slippery animal. It doesn't want to, it's manipulative. It doesn't want to give up control. And that's why we continually talk about, surrendering, right? And what is that? Well, in the West, that has a negative connotation, right? Passively giving up. That's not the kind of surrender we're talking about here. Lahiri Mahashaya, some of you know Lahiri, he's on your far left there on the altar. In Autobiography of a Yogi, he would perform, there's many stories of miracles with Lahiri. And Lahiri never said, one time one of his disciples asked him to heal him, he was blind. And he said, why ask me? I can't heal, I can't do anything. And he said, but certainly, Lord, the infinite spirit within you can heal. And he said, well, that is true. The infinite can heal. And Lahiri always had that resistless surrender of not taking responsibility for any of the healing or any of the miracles, that it's always God. That's what all the great masters aver, that God is the healer, God is the doer. And so it's this last little vestige of separateness that we're holding on to. Here, what happened with Judas is just that little bit of criticism coming in. Why is the master, why is Jesus spending this costly ointment, and it's being, Mary's wasting it, bathing his feet in it, massaging his feet? Why wasn't that sold to the poor? And within that thought, there's spiritual pride that he knew better than his master, right? And from that little bit of judgment flamed into a desire to see it his way for what he wanted to do with it. And that frustration then goes into anger, and then when we have anger, we lose all of our discrimination, and that's what the reading is talking about. I wanted to share the reverse of this, what Swami shares beautifully in the essence of the Gita, because the reverse is also true. You see, when we see something in the world that really pushes our button, it would be good for us to ask, well, what is it within me? Why is that pushing my button so much? And it's also good for us to take special note of that which inspires us. What's inspiring to you in other people? What qualities in other people do you admire? Because that's giving you a glimpse into your own inner divine reality and divine being as well. So along those lines, Swami shares, every step in this descent has a linchpin, the ego. To rise again towards wisdom, the deluded ego must reach the point where it realizes that what it has understood of life so far has brought it nothing but pain. Its first question then must be, do I like suffering? No, obviously. Next it should ask, what increases suffering? And what, on the other hand, lessens it? The answer is that suffering diminishes when there is a decrease of self-interest. The discernment of this truth leads to the first faint stirrings of recollection that a reality exists that is more than the ego and the body. The fog of delusion begins to lift from the mind, and one no longer strikes out at the world in anger for not giving him what he wants. From acceptance of what is comes a gradual decrease of worldly attachment. From lessened attachment comes lessening interest in the objects of the senses and an increase of longing for true wisdom, a longing which awakens devotion in the heart, love of truth, and intense aspiration to know true and everlasting bliss. I found this deeply inspiring, that if we can accept what is, if we can just accept ourselves, accept life, that what are we responsible for? Are we responsible for changing the world? Well, sure, yes, in a way, but we can't change the world just by doing it outwardly. How do we change it? We have to change ourselves. We know this. But yet, why do we just keep butting our heads up against when that person isn't doing what I wanted, and then we inflame? So if we can take responsibility for ourselves, for our spiritual growth, and how do we do that? That's the real question. Well, we need, in every week in the festival, there's a little line that stands out to me, and Swami says, pain is the fruit of self-love, whereas joy is the fruit of love for God. You see, when we can decrease just withdraw our energy from the attachment to the ego and just reverse the searchlight to our attachment. We can't do away with attachment, we just have to switch it. And we have to shift our desires and our attachments to God and to cling to Him. But we need to, you can't do a give up without a take up. You need to take up. And what are you taking up? You're taking up your own spiritual realization. And it's within deep meditation that you feel that contact with God. And then we want to hold on to that memory and love that. If that's the contact that is going to heal us of this greatest disease, which is this ignorance of our separation. And when we can start to take special note, not just in meditation, but in the outer world of the beauty. We know, of course, about all of the problems in the world today. If we just we wake up in the morning, we watch the news, we focus more on problems, right? We can't drive out the darkness with a stick. We need to bring in more light. Do you remember that infomercial? Maybe it was like I forget, it was a rock and roll CD or something like that. They used to say, "Freedom rock, turn it up." Maybe I'm dating myself. But that's what we need to do with the light. We need to turn up the light of God. We need to bring in more spiritual soft power, right? The kindly strength of tolerance, the compassion of the Divine Mother. This new wave of divine energy. We're on the eve of a great change. The world is breaking. The world's broken. So which way are we going to break? We're going to break more towards spirit, more towards bringing more light, more peace, more harmony. But we first have to work on ourselves and create that cell phone yama was one thing that I was writing about recently. When we wake up in the morning, to not get sucked into the TV, the phone, emails, texts, Facebook. Get into the Facebook of God. Turn within first. And you be a cause in the world. It's like Sri Teshwar used to say, the man of self-realization, he's a cause. And that his spiritual vibrations, they change the whole universe. That we don't realize how responsible we are in this way, that we can radiate goodness, that we can radiate peace in this way. And then when we feel that beauty within ourselves, we can start to take note of it and share it outwardly. I just was with Jyotish and Devi. We were at the Yogananda Fest in Palo Alto. And there was just this one moment where Jyotish was talking to a friend, and it was just a small, minor conversation after lunch, and I just saw this light in his eyes and his face and in the friends. And it brought such joy to my heart, just to feel the light of the soul. And see, nothing can dim the light of the soul. It's that when we're more identified with this world, we get whipsawed. I don't know about you, but I have been whipsawed by life. So it comes to the point where we say, enough is enough. Like, I'm done. I'm tapping out. But it's not running away from the world. It's running towards God. And this is not the time to go to the caves in the Himalayas. This is Dwapara Yuga. The light is coming out. That's why we're putting things on Facebook, right? Like this, we're trying to put more things, more of the light out there. Remember, there was that story of Rani Ban, this great saint in India, and she communed with Babaji. Babaji visited her a couple of times in her life. And her son Indu, who was an assistant with Swami Kriyananda, after his mother, Rani, left the body, he said that she still communicates with Babaji in the astral world. And she asked Babaji this question that I'm sure all of us have asked recently. Why do you permit this darkness in the world? Why don't you do something about it? And Babaji gave an interesting answer. He said, darkness has its place in the world of duality. You can't have creation without duality. So darkness has its place. While I can't stop the darkness, what I can do is increase the light. Freedom rock. Turn it up. That's what I'm talking about. We need to bring in more light. Bring in more levity. Whatever it is for you. And that starts, yes, it starts with meditation. It starts with the cell phone yama. But then it goes deeper into the life force yama, which is what the master called the pranayama. You see, when you can reverse that life force from going out through the senses and you can return it into the spine and offer it up into the brain, this is why Yogananda said the spine and the brain are the altars of God. That's where you commune with God. That's where you pierce through, you penetrate into the core of reality, where there's no... Giri Bala was the great woman saint that Yogananda wrote about in Autobiography of a Yogi. She didn't eat for 50 years. There's a whole chapter on her. And he said at the end of that chapter that she sighed and she went into the breathless, ecstatic state. The questionless realm of inner joy. We need to get to that questionless realm. And the only way we can get to that is through deep inner communion with God, and then bring it out, then bring that light, then bring that questionless ray of God into our daily life. And it might just simply be a smile. It might simply be giving a bottle of water to a homeless person. It might simply be whatever act of kindness. That is the new soft power that is going to change this world. So pain is the fruit of self-love, but joy is the fruit of love for God. So let's love Him and share that light and love and joy with all. God bless you.